At Christmas dinner, my grandpa raised his glass and smiled across the table. So he said, "Do you like the house I bought you?" Every fork stopped midair. I blinked, confused. What house? For a second, nobody breathed. Then my mom's hand slipped off her wine glass, her face turning pale. Grandpa's smile vanished. He pushed back his chair, the sound slicing through the silence. "Show me the deed now." That was the moment everything broke. But what none of them knew, what even Grandpa didn't know yet, was that this dinner had been planned long before they ever sat down. 2 weeks before that dinner, I wasn't thinking about deeds or houses. I was thinking about rent overdue bills and whether instant noodles could count as dinner 3 nights in a row. My apartment in Portland was small, the kind of place where the heater rattled louder than my thoughts. But it was mine, or at least the one thing I paid for myself. Every December, my parents liked to remind me how independence builds character. They said it right after posting pictures of their ski trips and new cars. Mom's messages always started sweet and ended with a jab, "You should learn how to manage money like adults do." I never replied. Silence was the only way to keep peace in our family. The only person who never made me feel small was Grandpa Edward Brooks. He was everything my parents pretended to be: disciplined, fair, quietly powerful. When I was 22, he told me, "Someday I'll make sure you have a place of your own." At the time, I thought he meant advice, not an actual house. He loved plans, not surprises. That's why when he called me a week before Christmas, I felt something strange in his voice. He said, "This year I have a special gift for you." I laughed it off. "Grandpa, you don't have to get me anything." He chuckled. "Oh, it's already done." I didn't think about it again until later that night, scrolling through my phone, staring at my parents' posts from their dinner party in Napa, red wine, polished smiles, all captioned, "Family is everything." It felt like a joke I wasn't in on. I told my friend Clara about the call. We were at our usual cafe, both hunched over laptops pretending to work. She smirked. "Special gift, huh?" "Maybe he finally realized you deserve more than their leftovers." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Or maybe it's another lecture wrapped in a bow. Outside, Christmas lights blinked against the rain. Inside, my coffee had gone cold. I didn't know it then, but the gift Grandpa talked about wasn't waiting under a tree. It was waiting to expose everything I thought I knew about my family. A few days later, I was searching for a client's invoice on my laptop when an unfamiliar email popped up, subject line, "Congratulations on the successful sale of the Pacific Lane property." At first, I thought it was spam. Then I noticed the address, Pacific Lane. My heart gave a quick, painful thud. That was the same street Grandpa had once mentioned years ago, the place he said would fit my sunlight. I stared at the message again, my throat tightening. Sold. But sold to who? I called Mom, keeping my voice light. "Hey, random question. Did Grandpa ever buy a house on Pacific Lane?" There was a pause longer than it should have been. Then her tone turned airy. "Oh, that. No, the market crashed that year, remember? Nothing ever came of it, right?" I said, slowly. "Because I got this weird email." Her breath hitched. "Angelina, you shouldn't open things that aren't yours. You always overthink." And just like that, she hung up. I sat there, phone buzzing in my hand, trying to make sense of what just happened. For the first time, her calm sounded like fear. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in my apartment felt like a whisper saying, "They lied." I dug deeper, tracing the email back to a realtor's office in Lake Oswego. The next morning, I called pretending to be a buyer interested in recent sales. The agent confirmed the house had been sold 3 years ago, under the name Thomas Brooks. I couldn't feel my hands, my father, my mother. They'd sold it and never told me. When Grandpa called later to confirm Christmas dinner, I almost told him everything. But something in me froze. I wasn't ready to be the one to break his heart. Instead, I said, "Of course I'll be there. I'll bring dessert." After hanging up, I stared out the window at the falling snow, the city lights turning blurry through the glass. Clara texted asking if I was okay. I typed back, "I think my parents stole something that was meant for me." She replied, "Then make sure they hand it back themselves." I didn't answer. I just closed my laptop, whispered to the empty room. "Okay then, Christmas dinner it is." 3 days before Christmas, I drove across town through freezing rain to Grandpa's office. His assistant Sarah greeted me with her usual calm smile, though something flickered in her eyes. Hesitation, maybe guilt. "I just wanted to drop off his gift early," I said, trying to sound casual. My fingers were trembling around the small wrapped box. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Mr. Brooks thought you'd already moved in." For a moment, the words didn't make sense. Moved in where Sarah looked around, then reached into a drawer and slid out a manila folder. "He talks about how proud he is that you finally have your own place, the one on Pacific Lane." I felt the world tilt. "Pacific Lane," I repeated. She nodded, whispering now. "He bought it 2 years ago. Said it was in your name. Said your parents handled the paperwork." Her eyes softened. "He really believes you've been living there." I swallowed hard. Can I see something?" She hesitated again, then quietly handed me a photocopy of the original deed. My name, bold, unmistakable, and then stapled behind it another form, a sale agreement signed by Thomas Brooks. My father's signature. Outside, the cold hit me like punishment. I sat in my car gripping the papers until they crumpled. I wanted to scream, but the only sound was the ticking of the turn signal I'd forgotten to switch off. That night, I called Clara. "They sold it," I said flatly. "They took what was mine and told him I had it." She was silent for a beat. Then quietly, "So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to dinner," I said. The next morning, I met with Mark Steele, Grandpa's longtime attorney. I didn't tell him everything, only enough to make him frown. "You'll be there, right?" I asked. He studied me. "Do you want me to protect your grandfather or expose your parents?" "Both," I said, in that order. When I left his office, the rain had turned to snow. Portland was quiet streets, glazed white, everything looking clean, untouched, except I knew better. I drove home, folded the papers back into the folder, and placed it in my bag. My reflection in the window looked calmer than I felt. "They think they're the ones with a plan," I whispered. But so do I. Christmas night came dressed in gold light and quiet tension. The Brooks family gathered around a table too long for the number of hearts that still cared. The chandelier shimmered. The crystal reflected flames from the marble fireplace. Laughter floated around like stage smoke, pretty, fake, rehearsed. I sat across from my parents, half listening to their stories about investments and vacations. Every word scraped against my nerves. Grandpa sat at the head of the table, the only person whose smile still looked real. He'd always been the axis of this family, steady, unshakable. I wondered what would happen when he realized everything he built rested on lies. He lifted his glass. "To family," he said warmly. My mother's lipstick caught the light as she smiled back. "Always." I caught her eye for a second. There was something behind her expression, something that looked too deliberate. I had to bite my tongue to keep from asking why. Dinner carried on with polite conversation, the kind where everyone talks but no one listens. Grandpa asked about my work, my clients if business was steady. "It's fine," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Not as profitable as selling someone else's property, though." Mom's fork clinked against her plate. "Excuse me." "Nothing," I murmured, but the heat was already rising in my chest. Grandpa chuckled softly, trying to lighten the moment. "You always were sharp, Angie." Then, almost as if testing the air, he leaned forward slightly. "By the way, do you like the house I bought you?" For half a second, I thought I'd misheard. The laughter stopped. The chandelier hum turned into silence. I blinked. My lips parted, but my voice came out thin. "What house?" The question snapped through the air. Mom's hand slipped from her wine glass, red, spilling across the tablecloth like blood on snow. Dad's jaw went rigid. Grandpa's eyes darted between us, confusion deepening. "What house?" I repeated louder this time. Grandpa set down his glass, the stem clicking against the wood. His face shifted, disbelief curdling into anger. "Show me the deed now." Dad tried first, his voice trembling but defensive. "Dad, this isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," Grandpa cut in, calm but sharp as glass. "I trusted you to manage that property for her," Mom's voice cracked. "Edward, please." Lillian," he said, eyes locking onto hers. "Don't insult me with another lie." Every sound in the room felt magnified. The fire crackling, the grandfather clock ticking, my pulse pounding. Sarah appeared from the side doorway as if she'd been waiting for the cue. She handed Grandpa a brown envelope. He didn't even look at it before calling Mark. Mark Steele entered briefcase in hand. "Mr. Brooks," he said evenly, "you asked me to review some transactions earlier this week. I think you'll want to see this." He opened the briefcase, spreading documents across the table. I watched my parents' faces drain of color. Mark pointed to the first page. "This is the original purchase deed. Buyer Angelina Brooks, signed and notarized." He flipped to the next page. "And this sold 3 months later by Thomas Brooks. Transfer of funds confirmed here." Grandpa's hand shook as he traced the signatures. "You sold her house," he whispered. "The one I bought for her future." Dad swallowed hard. "We were only managing it." "She wasn't ready. Ready for what?" I snapped, the anger breaking free. "To have something of my own, to stop needing you." Mom reached for me, desperate. "Honey, we did it for you. You were struggling." "We thought I pulled my hand away." "No, you thought you could hide it." The air was heavy with heat, the kind that comes before a storm. Grandpa stood then slowly, deliberately. The chair scraped the floor with a sound that made everyone flinch. "From this day forward," he said, "you don't speak for her again." No one breathed. Mom started to cry, mascara streaking down her face. "Edward, we didn't mean to hurt her. But you did," he said quietly. "And you did it while smiling across my table." He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. A silver key slid into his palm. He looked at me. "It was meant to be yours, Angie. It still is." He placed it in front of me. My hands didn't move at first. I couldn't. My throat was tight with something between relief and grief. Dad stood abruptly, his chair tipping over. "We're your family," he shouted. "You can't cut us out over some misunderstanding." Grandpa's eyes hardened. "You're right, your family, but not mine." Silence, the kind that rings louder than shouting. Mom's voice broke again. "Angelina, please. Tell him we can fix this." I finally looked up steady. "You can't fix something you sold." Mark gathered the papers, placing them neatly back in the folder. "We'll start reversal proceedings in the morning." Sarah stood quietly behind Grandpa, her expression unreadable. Maybe pity, maybe satisfaction. Grandpa exhaled long and heavy. "Merry Christmas," he said softly, not to them, but to me. He rested a hand on my shoulder, the same hand that once taught me how to draw straight lines when I was little. "You always did have an eye for balance," he murmured. Mom covered her face. Dad turned away, muttering something I couldn't hear. It didn't matter. The sound of their excuses no longer carried weight. I stood the key cold in my palm and looked around the room. The tree lights flickered. The air smelled of pine and betrayal. I'd imagined revenge would feel fiery, but it felt quiet, like the ending of a long, sad song. When I finally stepped outside, the night air sliced my cheeks. The snow had begun again, soft flakes drifting onto the porch railing. Behind me, through the window, I could see Grandpa still standing tall, a silhouette against the warm light. Inside, my parents sat small and silent, trapped in their own lies. I whispered to myself, almost a prayer. They wanted me to earn my life. I just did. And with that, I walked into the snow, free, cold, and awake, for the first time in years. The next morning, the house was quiet. No one mentioned the night before, but everyone felt its weight. Mom and Dad's car was gone by sunrise, just twin tire tracks curving down the snowy driveway. They didn't say goodbye. Grandpa found me in the sunroom, sitting with a cup of coffee gone cold. His movements were slower than usual, the kind that came after disappointment too deep to name. He said softly, "I gave them too much trust. I thought money could keep us honest." I looked up. "You believed the best in them." "That's not a mistake." He shook his head. "You reminded me what honesty actually looks like." He reached into his jacket, pulled out an envelope, and slid it across the table. Inside were fresh papers, my name printed clearly at the top. The title deed. No signatures missing this time. "I had Mark redo everything last night," he said. "It's official. The house is yours, and theirs will be handled separately." My throat tightened. "Grandpa, I don't even know if I want it anymore." He smiled, tired but warm. "You don't have to move in right away. Just know it's waiting, like I'll be whenever you need me." Later that week, news spread through Portland's business circles. Thomas and Lillian Brooks had been quietly removed from several boards. The Brooks family reputation, once polished, now carried a faint crack, but no one outside knew the real story. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindictive. Just lighter. Over coffee with Clara, I told her I didn't win anything. I just stopped losing myself. She nodded, smiling. That's what winning actually looks like. When I left the cafe, snow had melted into a thin shine on the sidewalks. For the first time in years, I walked without glancing over my shoulder. A week later, I drove to Pacific Lane. The street was quiet, lined with evergreens dusted in snow. The house stood there, white walls, tall windows, a front porch waiting like an open hand. I stepped out, the air crisp and clean, and held the silver key up to the morning light. For the first time, I didn't feel like someone's daughter or someone's disappointment. Just me. I turned the key in the lock and whispered, "Home." Justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just stands up. If this story hits something in you, share your thoughts and subscribe for more true family stories like this one.